Hi everyone, welcome to my exhibit. I decided to research the Continental Congress pamphlet. First, I think it's important to explain the significance of pamphlets in the early United States. So colonists published pamphlets to vent their anger and to rally others to join their cause. With the outbreak of war in 1775, independence became a very popular topic to discuss. Anyone could make their opinion known through a pamphlet. One famous example of these pamphlets is Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine, and I'll show a picture of that here. So, the purpose of the Continental Congress pamphlet was to inform the colonists of what was going on in the meetings of the Continental Congress. To understand this document, it's important to understand the context of the time, so I can explain that to you now. So, in 1774, the British Parliament passed a series of laws known as the Intolerable Acts. They did this with the intent to suppress unrest in colonial Boston by closing the port and placing it under martial law. In response, colonial protests led by a group called the Sons of Liberty issued a boycott. Merchant communities were reluctant to participate in the boycott because they were mutually agreed upon terms and meant to enforce the boycott's provisions. Colonial legislatures empowered delegates to attend a Continental Congress which would set the terms for the boycott. Connecticut was the first to respond. The Congress met in Philadelphia on September 5th, 1774, with delegates from each of the 13 colonies except for Georgia. On October 20th, the Congress adopted the Articles of Association, which states that if the Intolerable Acts were not repealed by December 1st, 1774, a boycott of British goods would begin in the colonies. The articles also outline plans for an embargo on exports if the Intolerable Acts were not repealed before September 10th, 1775. On October 21st, the delegates approved separate statements for the people of Great Britain on the North American colonies, explaining the colonial position, and on October 26th, a similar address was approved for the people of Quebec. Furthermore, on October 26th, the delegates put together a petition outlining the colonists' grievances for King George III. And the reason that they decided to do that was to attempt to de-escalate the conflict before taking a more radical action. They did not write a letter to the British Parliament because the colonists viewed the Parliament as an aggressor behind the Intolerable Acts. The Congress agreed to meet in Philadelphia on May 10th, 1775. By the time the Congress met again, war was already underway, so the delegates of the Second Continental Congress informed the Continental Army and dispatched George Washington to Massachusetts as its commander. Meanwhile, Congress drafted the Olive Branch Petition, which attempted to suggest means of resolving disputes between the colonies and Great Britain. Colonists sent the petition to King George III on July 8th, but he refused to receive it. British authority crumbled in the colonies, and the Continental Congress effectively took over as the government. By doing this, they exceeded the initial authority granted to it by the individual colonial governments. The Second Congress continued to meet until March 1st, 1781, when the Articles of Confederation that established a new government for the United States took effect. The Continental Congress assumed the role of renegotiating diplomatic agreements with foreign nations. The British Parliament banned trade with colonies and authorized the seizure of colonial vessels on December 23rd. On April 6, 1776, Congress responded to Parliament's actions by opening American ports to all foreign ships except for British vessels. On July 4, 1776, the Congress took the important step of formally declaring the colonies' independence from Great Britain. In September, Congress adopted the Model Treaty and then sent commissioners to France to negotiate a formal alliance. Congress and the British government made further attempts to reconcile, but negotiations failed when Congress refused to revoke the Declaration of Independence, both in a meeting on September 11, 1776. Congress spelled out terms for peace on August 14, 1779, which required British withdrawal and American independence. The next month, Congress appointed John Adams to negotiate these terms with England, but British officials were evasive. Formal peace negotiations would have to wait until after the Confederation Congress took over the reins of government on March 1st, 1781, because the Continental Congress had overstepped, following American victories in Yorktown that resulted in British willingness to end the war. The Continental Congress was crucial in coordinating the American colonies' resistance to British rule during the years of the American Revolution. So, that was a lot of information, but I'm going to sum it all up in a couple sentences. So, the Continental Congress evolved from a coordinating body of residents to a full-fledged government during a time of crisis. So, they overstepped their initial power role. They not only united the colonies against British oppression, but also laid the groundwork for diplomatic relationships that would prove very important in the fight for independence. By the time the Articles of Confederation were enacted in 1781, the Congress had already played a pivotal role in shaping the future of the United States. So, thank you so much for visiting my exhibit on the Continental Congress pamphlet, and have a good day.